Approximately 4 weeks have elapsed since the start of the Israel-Iran war. Over 2 weeks have passed since the ceasefire and the last recorded attacks. This video will take a look at who attacked what during the 12 days of open hostilities, who used more firepower and how effective were the attacks, what sort of targets were hit, and how many people died. We will also take a look at the current state of the Iranian nuclear capabilities after much of the dust settled. So keep watching. With tensions escalating across the globe, many fear we might be edging closer to a global conflict. That's exactly the kind of scenario you get to explore with today's sponsor. Supremacy World War III is a free-to-play online PvP strategy game where you pick a real country and marshal it through modern global warfare. You can compete against up to 99 other players in real time, but it's not a typical RTS game. I love that clicks per minute don't matter, my wrists need some care too. Instead, I get to plan actions and movements, go about my day, and then watch the results of battles unfold over a span of hours. Whole matches can sometimes last me a few weeks. I'm not quite as fast as the B-2 stealth bomber, but I'm getting there. In Supremacy World War III, you build up your provinces, build your tanks, stealth jets, nuclear subs, AWACSes, and over 100 other unit types. You forge alliances with other players and declare wars on your enemies. Ultimately, you try to conquer the world. I love that I can switch between PC and mobile while engaged in the same match. And new players will receive an exclusive start pack with a powerful elite bomber unlocked, a free seasonal unit we chose extra for you to dominate the battlefields from above. So don't waste time, click the link in the description below or scan the QR code to make sure you receive your goodies, as the offer is available for 30 days only. Precise and complete list of targets hit doesn't exist in the public. Both Iran and Israel avoided reporting damage to their own military or economic assets, focusing instead on civilian impacts. However, there were reports on the approximate number and size of Israeli strike packages over several days, and on the number of Iranian missiles fired, though this data mostly comes from Israel. Iran, unlike during earlier 2024 attacks, did not really disclose how many missiles it used. 2 datasets on Iranian missile launches come from the Jewish Institute for National Security of America and the Institute for the Study of War. Another is based on combined Israeli media reports. All data is approximate and varies due to sources categorizing barrages by different days. The bottom line is, we can't know precisely how many missiles Iran fired, and have only the IDF claim of Iran launching a total of 550 ballistic missiles and 1,000 drones. Tracking high-flying ballistic missiles is well within the capabilities of a modern air defense network using numerous radars. So could Israel have had reason to misreport those numbers? For instance, if Iran had launched 1,000 missiles, those missiles' effectiveness would appear even worse. We can also examine Iran's earlier strikes on Israel, when Israel didn't significantly interfere with Iran's launch operations. In April 2024, around 120 ballistic and 30 cruise missiles reached Israel, though some sources say over 300 were launched, many of which malfunctioned. Around 90% were reportedly intercepted. In October 2024, Iran fired 200 ballistic missiles, including more advanced types. A later analysis estimated 24 to 32 impacts inside Israel. Those were single-day attacks. It's plausible that in June 2025, Iran couldn't have launched significantly more missiles in a day, especially under heavy pressure from Israeli airstrikes on its missile launch infrastructure. Looking at daily missile lists, one could clearly observe that Iran fired fewer missiles as the war progressed, matching Israeli reports of Iranian missile launchers being hunted and destroyed. On June 16th, the Israeli military said it destroyed 120 Iranian missile launchers, estimating that was 30% of Iran's total force. A day later, they claimed 200 launchers destroyed, or 40%, showing some discrepancy. By June 19th, they stated half to 2/3 of Iranian launchers were hit. After the war, the IDF also claimed to have destroyed around 1,000 Iranian missiles on the ground. There is no independent way to verify this, but Israel's robust reconnaissance assets and spies, along with likely US satellite intelligence support, make it plausible. Mossad publicly thanked the CIA for making the operation possible. Unlike in 1991, when the US struggled to track Iraqi Scud launchers, modern sensors and rapid kill chain reactions make tracking missile launchers much easier and believable. And the US certainly has orders of magnitude more sensing satellites now than it did in 1991. Regarding Iranian missiles getting through Israeli defenses, the Israeli military usually claimed a 90% interception rate, though this varied on certain days. This list, compiled by Binkov, is based on news reports of impacts around Israel. It is almost certainly incomplete and likely shows only the minimum, excluding plausible hits on remote military sites. By June 19th, the Institute for the Study of War recorded 43 impacts, so a total of near 50 is plausible. This still suggests a 90% interception rate. Even if 50 more impacts on military sites occurred, which is unlikely, the rate would drop to 82%, only a bit worse than the interception rate during October 2024, when Israeli air bases were main targets. Moving to Israeli strikes, the IDF released some figures over time: number of planes used on some days, weapons employed, and targets attacked, though reports were irregular and some figures here are extrapolated. On June 22nd, the IDF reported over 1,000 sorties with hundreds of weapons used against Iranian ballistic missiles, launchers, and storage sites to date. That likely included non-combat aircraft, and only some sorties were ground attack ones. On June 18th, the IDF said it struck 1,100 targets in Iran by said date. Some were likely hit multiple times. From this, one can deduce Israel used roughly 12 to 1,800 air-launched weapons during the war, most probably not intercepted by Iran, and hitting targets with greater precision than Iranian missiles. Additionally, Israel may have launched some missiles without using aircraft, and certainly Israeli sabotage squads operated inside Iran, destroying some Iranian SAM systems. Iran certainly lost much of its SAM and radar inventory. On June 18th, the IDF claimed it destroyed 70 Iranian SAM batteries, in addition to several dozen early warning radars. This rough count of Iranian air defense batteries predates the October 2024 strike, when most of the S-300s were already taken out, before the 2025 war. If Israel struck 70 batteries, not just individual launchers, it essentially wiped out Iran's entire long and medium-range SAM network. That's assuming short-range SAMs weren't targeted much, as they posed little threat to Israeli planes. But even if half the figure refers to short-range systems, most long-range SAMs were still likely destroyed. We don't have to take IDF claims at face value, but Iran showed very little footage of Israeli aircraft wreckage. Only 2 confirmed sites of downed Hermes 900 drones. On June 18th, Iran's air defense claimed to have downed 61 drones and cruise missiles, including 4 Hermes drones. Even if true, this indicates very poor air defense performance. There were various Iranian TV channel reports of up to 4 F-35s being shot down, but with no real wreckage footage. Iran would be heavily exploiting such footage if it really existed. Mostly singular and weird AI images were shown, but even if up to 4 F-35s were lost, which is unlikely, those would still make Israeli losses very light overall. Israeli planes were observed flying deep inside Iran, and one of the Hermes drones was downed over Isfahan, about 250 miles inside Iranian airspace. That's a large, slow, and defenseless drone. All that suggests Iranian air defenses were heavily suppressed and rarely fired before being destroyed. On day 3 of the war, Israel struck Mossad airport, over 1,700 miles from Israel and 750 miles inside Iran from the Iraqi border. That demonstrated Israeli air superiority, which wouldn't be possible without neutralizing most Iranian SAMs. Remember, the Russian Air Force still avoids deep Ukrainian airspace due to SAM threats. Iran was also powerless against US bomber strikes, further showing its air defense network was likely neutralized, and that's why the Israeli Air Force was free to act. Before the war, Israel estimated Iran had up to 2,000 missiles capable of reaching it, a large figure implying an even bigger total ballistic missile inventory, including shorter-range missiles. In 2020, U.S. General McKenzie estimated Iran had 2,500 to 3,000 ballistic missiles in total. Mossad claimed Iran had not yet achieved a production rate of 1,000 missiles per year, and that a final figure goal of 8,000 missiles was not yet reached. So Iran likely could not produce more than several hundred missiles per year since 2020. Considering those used in 2024 and 2025, Iran probably still has a few hundred missiles capable of reaching Israel and a few thousand shorter-range missiles left. Iran's ability to strike outside its borders has thus been greatly reduced. Few long-range missiles remain, along with very few SAMs and radars. Iran's air force was never much of a factor, but reported attacks on its air bases likely damaged it. At worst, Israel lost a few combat jets, but likely it only lost drones that are easier to replace. It expended many weapons, likely around 1,500 bombs and attack missiles, plus possibly hundreds or 1,000 of various interceptor missiles. While Israel may currently be low on some supplies, these can be replenished, especially with US support. Iran also suffered severe damage to missile production facilities, which will likely hamper future missile production, though the extent is uncertain. Before we get to Iran's nuclear program, let's touch on something else. Iran's missiles on average aren't very precise. Some may have hit within meters, but most show worse accuracy. In October 2024, an Israeli intelligence building was missed by several hundred meters. At most, craters at Nevatim Air Base landed meters from significant targets. A few years ago, Iran claimed 20-meter precision for its long-range missiles. So Iran mainly hit economic and industrial sites, buildings like intelligence offices, and unfortunately many civilian areas due to imprecision. Individual military targets likely saw little meaningful damage. Decker Eveleth examined satellite images of Israeli air bases post-war and said only a few hits on the taxiways were visible. Israel certainly suffered economic damage. Bloomberg reported the Bank of Israel governor estimate where repair and compensation will cost $6 billion. Israel's finance minister suggested total war costs could reach $12 billion, possibly including munitions replacement. But even $12 billion or double that is manageable for Israel's pockets. Iran, however, suffered hits to research, engineering sites, and economic targets like gas and oil facilities. Missile-making facilities were heavily damaged and may take a few years to recover to full production volume. The SAM network likely suffered damage setting it back over a decade, assuming no further conflicts, which isn't guaranteed. After the ceasefire, Israel's defense minister said Israel reserves the right to strike Iranian missile or nuclear sites if Iran tries to rebuild capabilities. That's a threatening stance. Another major Iranian loss is Mossad's deep infiltration, tracking and targeting so many Iranian officials, scientists, and SAM batteries required numerous spies inside Iran. In 2024, former Iranian President Ahmadinejad said Mossad has extensively infiltrated Iran's intelligence apparatus. This allowed Israel to assassinate about 10 Iranian nuclear and missile scientists and around 20 high-ranking military commanders during the war. Scientist deaths are a major blow as their expertise takes years to cultivate. Iran can likely produce existing missile designs once the factories are rebuilt, but future better designs may be delayed by years. While current nuclear centrifuge designs and uranium processing methods probably remain unaffected, advanced nuclear tech development, like warhead miniaturization, which Iran hadn't started, will be harder without top scientists. Regarding overall casualties, both sides reported thousands wounded, though Israel reported far fewer deaths. Neither side's figures can be independently verified. Finally, what about Iran's nuclear program? Despite Trump's claims, US intelligence suggested Iran wasn't actively pursuing a nuclear bomb. Still, after Israeli strikes, Iran is technically likely farther from making one than before. though politically it may be closer to such a decision. Trump famously said US strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear program, but Trump says a lot of things. The Pentagon spokesperson said Iran's program was set back by 1 to 2 years. Iran's foreign minister claimed the deeply buried Fordo facility was heavily damaged, but curiously added no one knows exactly what happened inside. The US Defense Intelligence Agency said Iranian nuclear program was delayed only by months and Fordo wasn't seriously damaged. The IAEA chief said US bombs probably caused significant damage to Fordo, but the full extent is unknown. He added Iran could restart uranium enrichment within months, and overall damage to Iranian facilities was severe but not total. The Washington Post reported on June 29 that US intelligence intercepted Iranian military communications, downplaying the damage. EU officials said intelligence they got suggested Iran's uranium stockpile remains largely intact and dispersed, that Fordo was damaged but not destroyed. Iran has produced nearly 15,000 semi-advanced uranium enrichment centrifuges from 2009 to 2020, and likely still has some functioning. Realistically, it can build more, as the IAEA chief noted. Experts like physicists James Acton and David Albright, who inspected Iraq's nuclear program for the IAEA, weighed in. Albright said US strikes may have damaged centrifuges at Fordo but missed the uranium stocks. Basically, no one knows where the 400 kilos of already enriched uranium is, and the White House basically dodged questions on that issue. It could be stored in caverns under the Isfahan facility. US DoD said it did not use the GBU-57 penetrator bombs there because even those couldn't reach said caverns. Deep underground uranium storage requires much less space than centrifuges. And as for Fordo, our previous video on Fordo facility argued that fully neutralizing centrifuges in Fordo's 250-meter tunnel would require multiple separate attack clusters. The US struck only a single cluster on the mountain ridge from 2 directions. That said, Iran's nuclear program still suffered widespread damage. While Iran can still make some bombs, it cannot produce dozens quickly. However, the setback to its nuclear program is smaller compared to losses to its missile force and SAM network. Compared to Israel, Iran suffered far more damage, casualties and setbacks, losing the war by a considerable margin. However, Iran as a country remains standing. Its military is largely intact, and its future nuclear capabilities remain. Compared to, say, Iraq's defeat in 1991, Iran's losses were much less severe. Remember, try out free-to-play Supremacy World War III. Lead a real country through modern warfare and take over the world. And new players will get an exclusive start pack with a powerful elite bomber unlocked. That's a free seasonal unit to help you dominate the world. Just click the link in the description below or scan the QR code to play the game. And remember, Binkov may talk about war, but only real peace can bring us all together.